When a man realizes you're not like other women, the first thing that happens is not excitement, is discomfort. Because difference forces reflection, and reflection forces honesty. He starts noticing that you don't react the way he expected. You don't over-explain your feelings just to keep peace. You don't chase clarity when someone's giving confusion. You don't collapse emotionally every time uncertainty shows up. And that unsettles him, because most of his past experiences taught him that women would adjust themselves to stay connected. You don't. What shakes him is not your beauty, not your intelligence, not even your confidence on the surface. What really shakes him is your self-respect, the kind that operates quietly, the kind that doesn't need to announce rules or threaten to leave. You move differently. You listen more than you talk. You observe patterns instead of words. You give effort, but you don't overextend. And when something doesn't feel right, you don't argue with your intuition, you trust it. A man can feel the energy. He knows he can't play games with a woman who sees clearly. Men are very perceptive when it comes to power dynamics, even if they don't consciously talk about it. They know when they are in control, and they know when control is slipping. With you, control was never on the table, not because you're dominant or aggressive, but because you were already complete before he arrived. You didn't come into his life looking for validation, direction, or identity. You came as a whole person. That's rare. And rarity always creates pressure. He starts questioning himself. Am I consistent enough for her? Am I showing up the way I should? Am I wasting time? Because a woman like you doesn't need ultimatums to leave. She leaves when alignment disappears. That's what makes him uneasy. There's no safety in laziness with you. No comfort in bare minimum behavior. Your silence speaks louder than arguments ever could, and your distance is not. Punishment is protection. What really shakes him is realizing that you would be okay without him. Not in a bitter way, not in a defensive way, in a calm, grounded, peaceful way. You enjoy his presence, but you don't depend on it. You desire connection, but you don't fear absence. That balance is intimidating to a man who is used to being needed more than he is used to being chosen. Because now if he wants you, he has to earn you every day with consistency, effort, and integrity. A man like that starts paying attention to his actions more closely. He replays conversations in his head. He notices when you don't react impulsively. He feels it when you pull back slightly, not to manipulate, but because your energy responds naturally to effort. And that's when it hits him, you're not operating from insecurity, you're operating from clarity. And clarity is dangerous to anyone who survives on ambiguity. You don't compete with other women because you know comparison is unnecessary when you are grounded in who you are. You don't rush intimacy to secure commitment. You don't overshare your pain hoping someone will save you. You let people reveal themselves over time and you believe them when they do. That patience tells him something important. You're not afraid of losing him. You're more afraid of losing yourself. That realization alone shakes a man to his core. Some men respond to that by stepping up. They become more intentional, more present, more honest. They rise because they see value worth protecting. Other men respond by pulling away, creating distance, or acting confused, not because you confused them, but because your presence exposed where they were unprepared. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know. You don't need explanation. You don't need closure conversations. Their behavior answers the question. A woman like you forces truth to surface. You make it impossible for a man to hide behind charm, potential, or future promises. With you, it's about now, about actions lining up with words, about emotional availability matching interest. And when those things don't align, you don't stay to negotiate your worth. You quietly disengage. That's not coldness. That's emotional maturity. What shakes him most is realizing that you don't need to be convinced to stay. You need to feel safe to remain. Safe emotionally, safe mentally, safe in consistency. And if that safety disappears, so do you. No drama, no scenes, no revenge. Just absence. An absence from a woman who brought peace, warmth, and authenticity into his life feels heavier than loud conflict ever could. You don't weaponize love. You don't withhold affection to gain power. You simply respond to reality as it is. And that's why he can't forget you easily, because you didn't attach through chaos. You attached through stability. And when that stability is gone, the void is unmistakable. So when he says you're not like other women, understand what he's really saying. He's saying you challenged him without trying. You raised the standard without demanding. You revealed his readiness without accusing. And whether he rose to meet you or walked away, your presence changed him. Not because you tried to change him, but because you refused to change yourself. When a man realizes you're not like other women, two things start happening inside him at the same time. First, he feels challenged. Second, he feels exposed. And neither of those feelings comes from anything you said or did intentionally. They come from who you are. When you're not trying to impress, persuade, or prove anything, you don't lead with desperation. You don't perform for affection. You show up as yourself, and that alone shifts the entire dynamic. Men are used to patterns. They're used to predictability. You break both without effort, and that's what shakes him. The first thing that really gets to him is your standard, not the loud kind. Not the kind written in rules or delivered in ultimatums. Yours are quiet, consistent, and lived out through behavior. You don't argue about respect, you expect it. You don't chase communication, you reciprocate it. You don't stay where effort feels forced. That's unfamiliar territory for a man who's used to testing limits to see how much he can get away with. With you, there's no testing phase because you don't negotiate your worth. You observe. And when something doesn't align, you adjust your presence instead of your values. That's unsettling because now he has to be intentional. He can't lean on charm alone. He can't promise future versions of himself to excuse present inconsistency. You don't get carried away by potential. You pay attention to patterns. And once a man realizes that you're watching what he does more than what he says, he becomes very aware of himself, his effort, his honesty, his follow-through. That awareness creates pressure, and pressure reveals character. What really makes him pause is the realization that you're not afraid to walk away. Not in a dramatic way, not with threats, but in a calm, grounded way that tells him you've done it before and survived just fine. You enjoy connection, but you don't cling to it. You want love, but you don't lose yourself searching for it. That balance throws him off because many men are used to being needed. Being wanted is different. Being chosen daily by a woman who could leave if she wanted to, that's humbling. The second thing that shakes him is your independence. And independence doesn't mean you don't want partnership. It means your life doesn't stop functioning when someone enters it. You have your own rhythm, your own peace, your own identity. You don't rush emotional intimacy to secure commitment. You don't overshare your pain, hoping it will create closeness. You let trust build naturally, and that tells him something powerful. You're not here to be rescued. You're here to share, not to be saved. A man can feel that. He senses that you're not looking for someone to fill a void. And when there's no void to exploit, manipulation has no place to land. Games don't work on you because you're not playing. Silence doesn't scare you because you know who you are when no one is speaking to you. Missed signals don't confuse you because you understand that clarity is a form of respect. That level of emotional maturity forces a man to show up honestly or not at all. He starts questioning himself without you ever asking questions. He notices that you don't react impulsively. You don't spiral. You don't demand reassurance every time there's distance. And that's when it hits him. This woman is emotionally regulated. She doesn't operate from fear. She operates from self-awareness. And self-aware women are dangerous to men who rely on confusion, inconsistency, or control to feel powerful. You don't compete with other women because you don't measure your value through comparison. You don't try to be chosen. You allow yourself to be discovered. That energy makes a man realize that if he loses you, it won't be because someone else took you. It'll be because he failed to meet the standard your presence naturally set. That realization is heavy because it removes excuses. There's no one to blame, just a mirror. Some men respond to this by rising. They become clearer, more consistent, more intentional. They step into leadership, not because you demanded it, but because they don't want to lose something rare. Other men shrink. They hesitate. They pull back. They label you as intimidating or too much. But what they really mean is you require more than they're prepared to give. And instead of growing, they retreat. What's important to understand is that your difference doesn't exist to teach anyone a lesson. It's simply who you are when you're aligned with yourself. You don't withhold love to gain control. You don't give love blindly to gain security. You respond to reality. When effort is present, you're warm. When effort fades, you become distant, not to punish, but to protect your peace. That clarity leaves a lasting impression. A man might not say it out loud, but he feels it deeply. Being with you forces him to be better or be honest about not wanting to be. There's no room for pretending. No room for half commitments. And that's why, even after distance or separation, you stay in his mind. Because you didn't bond through chaos or drama. You bonded through stability, respect, and emotional presence. And when that's gone, it leaves a silence that's hard to replace. You didn't change him by trying. You changed him by existing exactly as you are. By knowing when to lean in and when to step back, by choosing yourself without closing your heart. And that combination, self-respect and softness, is rare. It shakes a man not because it's loud, but because it's real. When a man realizes you're not like other women, the first shift happens internally, long before he ever speaks about it. He feels challenged, exposed, and curious all at once. Challenged because you don't respond to situations the way he expected. Exposed because your presence highlights areas in him that are unfinished. Curious because he can't predict you. You don't overreact, you don't underreact, and you don't reshape yourself to fit what you think he wants. You show up grounded, self-aware, and emotionally steady, and that alone disrupts the rhythm he's used to. Men get comfortable with patterns, and you break them without trying. What shakes him most in the beginning is your self-respect, not the loud kind that announces boundaries with threats or ultimatums, but the quiet kind that lives in how you move. You don't argue for respect, you don't demand effort, and you don't chase clarity. You expect consistency and you respond accordingly. When something feels off, you don't beg for reassurance. You take a step back and observe. That unsettles him because he realizes there's no room to test limits with you. You're not trying to win him over, and that makes him realize he has to earn you. Men are very aware of power dynamics, even if they never say it out loud. They know when they are leading, and they know when they're coasting. With you, coasting doesn't work. You don't reward bare minimum effort with full access to your energy. You don't attach quickly just because attention is present. You take your time. You let actions reveal intentions. That patience forces a man to look at his behavior more closely. He starts asking himself questions you never asked him. Am I showing up consistently? Am I serious or just passing time? Because he knows you're not here for confusion. Another thing that shakes him deeply is your emotional independence. You want connection, but you don't need it to feel whole. Your life doesn't pause waiting for someone to choose you. You have your own rhythm, your own peace, your own direction. You don't cling to attention, and you don't panic in silence. That kind of independence is intimidating to a man who is used to being needed more than he is used to being chosen. With you, he feels the difference. You enjoy him, but you don't depend on him, and that changes everything. He begins to sense that if he wants to stay in your life, he has to be intentional. There's no room for laziness, no space for half promises. No comfort in inconsistency. You don't punish him when effort drops, but you don't ignore it either. Your energy adjusts naturally. When he shows up, you're warm. When he pulls back, you become distant, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That responsiveness forces him to confront his level of emotional maturity. What really shakes him is realizing that you would be okay without him. Not bitter, not hardened, just okay, peaceful even. You've built a life where love is an addition, not a requirement. And for a man who's used to being the center of someone's emotional world, that realization is humbling. He understands that if he loses you, it won't destroy you, but it might stay with him. Because you didn't attach through chaos or drama. You attach through clarity and stability. Another layer of this is your boundaries. You don't build walls, but you don't leave doors wide open either. You let people in slowly. You observe how they handle responsibility, communication, and consistency. You don't overshare your wounds, hoping it will create intimacy. You let trust grow naturally. That tells him you're not looking for a savior. You're looking for a partner. And partnership requires effort, accountability, and presence. You also don't compete with other women. You don't compare yourself. You don't feel the need to prove you're better. You know who you are. That confidence is unsettling because it means he can't manipulate you with jealousy, attention games, or scarcity. You're not trying to be chosen. You're allowing yourself to be discovered. And that makes him realize that if he loses you, it won't be because someone else took you. It'll be because he didn't rise to the level your presence required. This is where men split into two paths. Some rise. They become clearer, more consistent, more intentional. They step into emotional leadership because they see something rare and don't want to lose it. Others retreat, they hesitate, they label you as intimidating, distant, or too much. But what they're really saying is that your standards exposed when they weren't ready to grow. Instead of evolving, they pull away. Your difference forces truth. You make it impossible for a man to hide behind charm, potential, or future promises. With you, it's about what's happening now, about whether words and actions align, about whether effort is steady or situational. And when it doesn't align, you don't stay to convince him. You quietly disengage. That absence speaks louder than arguments ever could. What stays with him long after is how you made him feel about himself. You didn't try to change him. You didn't criticize or control. You simply reflected reality. Being with you made him aware of his habits, his effort, and his emotional availability. And awareness can be uncomfortable. But it's also unforgettable because even if he wasn't ready, he felt what it was like to be seen clearly. So when he says you're not like other women, what he's really saying is that you disrupted his comfort. You challenged his assumptions. You raised the standard without demanding it. You showed him what connection looks like when it's rooted in self-respect, independence, and emotional clarity. And whether he rose to meet you or walked away, your presence left a mark. Because a woman who knows who she is doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't shrink. She simply stands in her truth, and that truth shakes anyone who isn't ready to stand firmly in theirs. When a man realizes you're not like other women, what unsettles him first is not attraction, but awareness. He becomes aware that you don't move from the same emotional place he's used to. You don't react impulsively, you don't chase reassurance, and you don't confuse attention with intention. You listen, you observe, and you respond with intention instead of urgency. That difference immediately shifts the balance because most men are familiar with predictable emotional patterns. You don't fit those patterns, and unpredictability forces presence. He has to pay attention with you. One of the strongest things that shakes him is your self-respect. Not the kind that announces itself or creates tension, but the kind that quietly governs your choices. You don't argue your worth. You don't demand better treatment. You simply expect it and adjust your availability when it's not there. That makes him realize there's no room for laziness with you. No comfort in inconsistency, no safety in half effort. You don't need to threaten to leave because your behavior already shows that you will not stay where you are not valued, That realization lands heavily because it means he cannot rely on charm alone. You don't overextend emotionally to secure a connection. You don't give more than you receive in hopes that it will be appreciated later. You give freely when effort is present and you pull back when it's not. That balance is disarming because it reveals that your love is intentional, not desperate. A man senses that immediately. He feels that he is not being pursued, he is being evaluated, not judged harshly, but observed honestly. And honesty can be intimidating when someone is used to being accommodated. Another thing that deeply affects him is your independence. You want companionship, but you don't need it to feel complete. Your life doesn't revolve around waiting for messages, plans, or validation. You have your own sense of purpose, your own emotional stability, and your own sources of fulfillment. That tells him something powerful. You are choosing him, not clinging to him. And being chosen by someone who could walk away is very different from being needed by someone who feels they can't. Men often confuse control with connection. With you, control was never an option. You don't respond well to manipulation, silence games, or emotional inconsistency. Not because you confront it aggressively, but because you disengage from it naturally. You don't panic in distance. You don't beg for clarity. You understand that confusion is information. That awareness makes a man realize that if he wants to stay connected to you, he has to be clear, consistent, and emotionally present. Your standards also play a huge role in what shakes him. They are not rigid, but they are firm. You don't lower them to keep someone comfortable. You don't compromise your values to avoid being alone. You understand that loneliness is temporary, but self-betrayal lasts much longer. That mindset changes how a man sees you. He recognizes that you are not afraid of endings. You are more afraid of staying in situations that erode your peace. And that courage is confronting. With you, a man becomes more aware of his actions. He notices when he follows through. He becomes conscious of his tone, his consistency, his effort. Not because you demand it, but because your presence requires it. You don't reward bare minimum behavior with full emotional access. You don't confuse potential with progress. You care about what is happening now, not what might happen someday. That clarity eliminates excuses, and without excuses, truth rises to the surface. Your emotional regulation also leaves a strong impression. You don't escalate conflict unnecessarily. You don't weaponize silence or affection. You communicate when it's healthy, and you withdraw when it's not. That maturity forces him to confront his own emotional habits. He can't hide behind chaos or drama with you because you don't feed it. And when chaos no longer works, a man has to either grow or go. What really stays with him is the realization that you would survive his absence. You wouldn't fall apart. You wouldn't lose yourself. You would grieve, learn, and move forward. That truth is sobering, because while losing you wouldn't destroy you, it would likely linger with him. Not because of pain or regret alone, but because he experienced what it felt like to be with a woman who was grounded, intentional, and emotionally present without being dependent. You don't compete with other women because you don't see relationships as a competition. You know your value is not determined by comparison. That confidence removes jealousy as a tool. It removes insecurity as leverage. A man understands that he cannot provoke you into proving yourself. You already know who you are. And that self-assurance makes him realize that if he loses you, it won't be because someone else outperformed him. It will be because he didn't show up fully. This is where men diverge. Some rise to meet the standard your presence sets. They become more intentional, more honest, more consistent. They understand that what they have with you is rare, and they treat it accordingly. Others feel overwhelmed. They label you as intimidating, distant, or too much. But what they are really saying is that you require more than they are ready to give. And instead of growing, they retreat. Your impact doesn't come from trying to change anyone. It comes from being unwavering in who you are. You don't force lessons. You don't deliver speeches. You simply live in alignment with your values. And that alignment acts like a mirror. It shows a man where he is solid and where he is lacking. Whether he appreciates that reflection or resents, it depends entirely on his readiness. So when a man says you're not like other women, understand the weight behind it. He's acknowledging that your self-respect, independence, standards, and emotional clarity disrupted his comfort. You didn't shake him by doing too much. You shook him by being whole. And a woman who is whole doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't shrink to be loved. She stands fully in herself, and that presence alone is enough to change the room.